Okay, good morning. My name is Chris Caius, and I am the chairman of the Kane County Administration Committee. And I'm calling this meeting to order on Friday, February 14th, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. Can we have roll call, please?
Arroyo. Berman.
Here.
Gums
Here.
Young.
Here.
Juby. Caius.
Present.
Roth.
Roth here.
In-person quorum. A request for remote participation from Mr. Berman. Answer?
He's not online right now.
He's not online. Well, I would ask preemptively then that if there's any objection for having Mr. Berman online later on when he does get to us, if he can. Thank you. Now, hearing no objection.
No objections.
Approve that. I would then entertain a motion or a request for unanimous consent for approval of the minutes for January 15th, 2025. Anybody?
Mr. Chair, Gums will ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes.
Minutes of January 15th, 2025 by Gums. Is there any objection to that? Or any changes? Hearing none or seeing none? Minutes are approved. I don't have any public comment. Public comment, finance report is on file. Then on to Mr. Fonstock. Presentation of the Kane County Facilities Master Planning, which is part of the Executive Director's report. Mr. Fonstock.
Good morning, Roger Fonstock with IT and Building Management. I brought just kind of a refresher for new board members, what we finished with the facilities master plan. And then the second part is to kind of get direction on what some of the short-term goals and objectives were, or some of the short-term planning features. The master plan for facilities was divided into three sections. There's a kind of an early short-term 1 to 3 type of time frame. Then there's like a 3 to 10 type of time frame. And then there's things that we think are beyond 10 years that are really a reach for us right now as far as the finances and the planning. So I wanted to go through that with the committee as a new group. There's a few new people, and this is the abbreviated presentation version of this. This planning process started several years back with basically a condition assessment of all the buildings. So what condition, size, shape, function are the buildings? And then we did a space needs utilization. How much space do people need? How much space do they have? Where would we put them if we had more people, less people? So there's those two components, condition and space needs, and then they go into a kind of a strategic planning and facility planning process where we bring all the ideas from departments, elected officials, and the board together and try to come up with what will be our guidance for the future of the county. And it's not that we're going to necessarily execute everything in the plan. While that would be great, it keeps us in touch with what our goals were or what we're supposed to be working towards. So it gives us the idea of if it's not in this plan, it's outside of the plan and the board would need to change the plan. If it's inside the plan, we still bring it to committee and we try to push to develop and mature those plan sets, get the pricing and get those projects moving, try to determine funding. But the plan itself is set up to give us that type of guidance. So myself, Charles, Heidi, we had Mark Smith, previous people from the department, all of us working as a team with White and Company, who was the architect and engineering firm that worked on this, come together. And this was the byproduct of all the board departments and officials work culminated into this abbreviated kind of 3-part plan. So the first short-term things are the things that we think are immediate, things that we know need to be dealt with. There's the health department, there's storage facility issues, We also have challenges at the Juvenile Justice Center where they see a lot more activity with people that are under 17 under. Lots of activity there. SAO in the criminal division, they have some short-term and long-term space needs. You probably heard that yesterday at Committee of the Whole. Lots of offices like that are bursting at the seams. I know the civil division for state's attorney, they need space. Many of the offices on this campus are at their capacity and trying to find places where people can work when they bring in even consultant or temporary support. They just not a lot of places to put people still. In particular, Scott's here from OEM. He can testify to this. He's struggling with space to store and manage vehicles for emergencies and also his people and his volunteers. Very difficult to manage. His office is one of those that has to be very elastic. When it's idle, it's maybe small. When it's a big problem, it just, explodes with people. You may have 40, 50 people show up in a day. The same thing, 3rd Street Courthouse, we've been doing some renovation and some work there and we're planning more work for the civil division. There is the CASA space in 3rd Street Courthouse that needs to be addressed to some extent. The county board signed a lease renewing basically a low value lease proposition to the court appointed special advocates, which is under the judicial circuit's purview, but they are their own operation, their own revenue, their own funding source, but they occupy a space in one of our buildings. And the lease for that has about a little over a year maybe left in it. And one of the provisions in the lease is that the county would try to do something to provide them a space or allow them to keep the space. But we would essentially deal with it during that 3-year period of the lease. We have 1 year left. So that's on this list as well.
Roger, can I ask a question about that? Because CASA's in our 3rd Street Courthouse.
They're in 3rd Street Courthouse,
And
absolutely.
The services provided by CASA, just very quickly, that
They're
provided to the
representing
county are
the
millions of
children.
dollars, worth millions of dollars. So we're providing them a low rent, but if it's a mandated service that if we didn't CASA didn't provide it, we would be responsible for that.
I'd leave that up to the state's attorney, but it's certainly something that the county and
Unless I have that wrong.
the courts have
You're frowning.
embraced. And I think that's probably in line with their arguments.
So CASA is a third party that
Right.
works with the county. They would be here regardless of where the location is. What has happened is we've entered into a lease agreement with them to have them in the courthouse house so that they are close. Part of that contract does require the county to find them a suitable location going forward. I do believe that's kind of what Roger's alluding to with the JJC. And I will say for the civil division, if that were to happen, that would allow us to have more space. We are completely at maximum.
Yeah.
So the next item is discusses the Juvenile Justice Center expansion. From 3rd Street Courthouse, where it talks about the Juvenile Justice Center expansion, or JJC is the acronym they use. That would be if the courts expanded the Juvenile Justice Center at the St. Charles Criminal Courts or Justice Center campus, then CASA could potentially move into an expanded space there. That's something that's been discussed. There was a concept plan done by the judiciary for the purpose of expanding the Juvenile Justice Center to accommodate an additional juvenile court and more offices and potentially adding CASA. And I believe they even talked about mutual exchange for parents and children. So there's a couple of things that the judiciary is talking about with regard to that. We do have, like I said, for the government center here, short-term needs where we could look at leasing. They've talked about everything from leasing to building. I think construction and purchasing might not be a near-term solution. Leasing might be because of the need for office space. The other thing is leasing is more, I'll use the word elastic again. You can size it up and size it down. You can grow and shrink depending on what happens. And then we also had a discussion about warehousing space and storage. I don't know if I missed that, the storage facility. So many of you may have seen it as you go through offices, departments. We have things stored in all sorts of places throughout the county. Many of the offices use office space, back halls, loading dock areas. We have the former coroner's office for storage, but we don't have a warehouse. We don't have a logistics location to store, to have trucks drop off, pick up supplies or equipment. The closest thing we've had is the North Campus, which is the Kane County Branch Court in St. Charles. And that right now is full of records and election equipment. So it's pretty much full. It's probably close to 25,000 square feet of storage in North Campus. But outside of that, we don't have a storage warehouse that we can use for storage of things. So you'll find things that are taking up maybe some office space or a lot of office space that are probably better suited for a warehouse. And that's another area that we think would be important in this short-term planning, is how do you deal with storage and then some of those immediate office space challenges. Another thing that we've determined in working with the sheriff's office and some of the partners out at the judiciary, and this is something that in all likelihood should have been dealt with 6 years ago, is surface parking and the impound of vehicles for the sheriff's office. So our team has been working on the asphalt plan for the Judicial Center campus. We're trying to build in additional surface parking in the impound lot and some additional parking around the facilities. So that's already started. Some of the other things that have already started, we did start with the health department and the Elgin building purchase, the 2170 Point Boulevard. That's underway. We're working on the roofing and air conditioning before we put people in there. There's some things that we still need to do, but that's coming along. There's also a concept plan for the use of the space that's being completed, and that'll basically determine who goes in what parts of the building and how much of the building we're going to be providing. And then out of that, there'll also be a recommendation from them about what types of renovation would they require in order to occupy it. And then there's going to be a period where we have to do some right sizing, which is how much can they afford as a special fund department or office, or how much can the county afford to put into the building versus occupying the building the way it is situated. So the building overall is in good condition. We're doing the roof, the air conditioning, we're getting a concept plan done. And then the next step would be actual plans to do any renovation work. We think we need to do some ceiling tiles and carpeting, getting the roof and air conditioning fixed up. There's some cosmetic things about the building that we want to touch up, door jambs and entries. But for the most part, building new office spaces or renovating it to the extent where you're putting up walls and structures, a lot of that either needs to be borne by special revenue funds or it has to be borne by the capital fund. And so we're looking at those special funds as being the point where people decide how much do they want to put into their office. But that's the short-term planning process. You'll see in the 3 to 10 years, some really big objectives. And the Judicial Center expansion has been something that I would say has been talked about for 20 years. And when they built the Judicial Center, the original plans for that campus had the entire government center, everything being moved to the St. Charles campus. They had planned for an expansion of the courts. There was if you're familiar with the building, they call it the grassy knoll or the front green area. They had actually contemplated building out the front of that for additional courtrooms, moving the entire civil over there and other services, including the circuit clerk. So our circuit clerk right now is in 540 Randall with traffic court and the branch court, and the Judicial Center is, 2 miles away, 3 miles away. There has been a 20-year commitment to try to get the circuit clerk at the Judicial Center campus, the entire office. So it hasn't happened. I think it's in that 3 to 10 years is very ambitious, considering, the financial commitment that that would take. But that is in there. I think, it probably easily could be a 10+ year unless there's some dramatic change. Cancom and OEM. We currently handle Cancom and OEM from a couple different locations. Cancom primarily is in Building C in the middle floor, and they are desperately in need of space to expand operations for office space, training, other things that they need besides just dispatch. They need to have a training room for their team. The OEM offices over there as well across the hall. They have a couple of offices and a situation room or an incident room, but not nearly enough space for, say, volunteers and especially for all their equipment, storage of equipment. I think we had a discussion about the Red Cross and cots and supplies, and I think we're at the point where it's in a trailer. Scott, thank you, Scott, from OEM. So we're trying to figure out, where do we store these things for on the ready, right? And I think that that's a big issue for Cancom and OEM. This describes a facility for that. It's ambitious, I would say, but at the same time, if you look around, many other jurisdictions of county government and municipal have built out OEM emergency operations. They have and I know Scott's going to talk about continuity of operations. All of that fits together. We have talked about a satellite facility in Aurora. We do have 4 locations in Aurora that we operate out of. We have a courtroom or a court office, which has some court clerk presence. I believe some attorneys are there, but we're in the Aurora Police Department. Then we have the 1240 Highland, which is the Health Department building. 1330 is the court services probation. And then we also have an office in Batavia as well that deals with Office of Community Reinvestment. But those satellite offices, down there are something that the county has talked about. Could we either consolidate or buy a building, build a building? How do you want to go about consolidating to have essentially a single stop location in Aurora, and then ultimately in Elgin, a single stop location for people in the 2 most densely populated cities in the county where they can go to get services without coming to Geneva. So that was kind of part of the discussion, was having satellites for the 2nd largest city in the state. And I believe Elgin's the 6th, something like that, to have the place where their residents can go right in their own town. So that was another discussion. Then the Elgin satellite facility, that's something that we did acquire, and we're working on the concepts and plans for that. Lastly is the government center expansion, which that was this campus. There's a lot of debate about refurbish, renovate, or move. And I think we've kind of settled in on that we need to focus on either renovating this or a new facility. And lastly, if there's an option to renovate the branch court on Randall Road when we determine if we're going to move the circuit clerk. So those are kind of the layout of the 3 different areas of the master plan. And I'm going to end there before I talk about the next step, which is like, what
Sure.
direction do you want?
What, then this was completed, what, 2 years ago?
It was in November. Before
Of-
we finished in November, the actual plan, and it was approved, I think, at the November, December board.
This last year?
Yes,
Seems like a longer time ago than that.
yeah,
You sure you're right?
yes,
Yeah, okay, and then this is on the website, right?
yes,
Okay, so if this master plan's on the website, so make sure you take advantage
Yes.
of you've probably already seen it, I'm just telling you that. But yes, Ms. Gums?
Thank you.
Yep.
We're talking about the Highland Avenue properties.
yes.
My questions are, there have been apparently discussions about whether we're going to be selling, acquiring, converting,
Yes.
all of those things. My question is, who's having those discussions outside of the admin committee? Because I had heard a rumor that we're going to be selling our health department building. And if we're having discussions about those outside of the admin committee, that would be inappropriate.
As far as I know, our office hasn't discussed selling any properties. There's been, a couple people that unsolicited offers to purchase the Fabian campus came through, and an unsolicited offer to purchase our branch court came through. And we basically, looked at those, and I discussed it with, Chairman Caius and asked him if he wanted to bring those forward. They were not, in my opinion, reasonable, for what we're dealing with. I could explain that in more detail, but you have, just for an example, the branch court, I'll just say that the unsolicited offer was in the $7 to $8 million range. And that facility, to rebuild it or find another one, would cost you 15 to 20 million. So, would you sell it to be homeless and have to find another place? It's not a real reasonable proposition for us, given the current climate. And we asked about whether or not that was something to put on the agenda or to consider, but it just, one of those things where it disintegrated and fell apart pretty quickly.
Okay, and then one more follow-up question, just,
Yeah.
we had talked a couple of months ago about all of our vacant properties, like all of our empty space,
Yes.
and then, sending me a list of that.
Yeah.
I would still like that so
Okay.
that we can,
At one time, we
I
put
mean, we're
together,
identifying
Yeah.
so many different things here.
yeah,
In my opinion, for me personally, I need to know what we have
okay.
on the value of it and, all of those things. So I would still appreciate that.
Yeah, all of the buildings and facilities we own are in the space needs utilization study, the facility study, but we can get a kind of an abbreviated version of that and provide that. That would be easy.
And that was one of the first things we did when I. was
Yeah.
chair, I think, is that-
And we could update it. There would be the new Elgin building would add 46,000 square feet to that, but
And they're meant
um,
to be living documents as well, so we
Yes.
should be updating those as we go.
yes.
Mr. Arroyo,
Ms. Gums, you
Or-
done?
did that answer your questions?
Yeah,
Ms.
for now.
Gums? Okay,
thanks.
Mr. Arroyo?
Yeah.
Do we own the two buildings in Highland or are we leasing them?
We own both buildings.
And then the branch court, do we own it or are we leasing from the city of Aurora?
The
court
branch
Aurora.
court in Aurora, it's not a lease. I'm not sure exactly the legal terminology. Aurora provided the facility for us to have branch court there. I'm not sure that there is a specific rental agreement on that. It's each city has the ability to work with the 16th Judicial Circuit to have a branch court. We've had one in Elgin. We've had one in Carpentersville. The one in Carpentersville, I think, was subsequently shut down a few years back. And then there's the St. Charles is actually a branch court, the Randall Road location. Then the Aurora one was built by the city.
Trust
Yeah.
the budget.
Yeah, the
The
city
official
built it.
term squatter?
Yes, I remember
I
two times. the
guessed,
budget
I
on
don't
that
know,
building.
official guest.
So if we don't own it and we're not leasing it, who is in charge of maintaining it?
They maintain it.
Aurora maintains it, City of Aurora
Yeah.
maintains it.
Yeah, it's
We've never once
connected,
received the bill.
it's connected directly to their jail and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
lockup. I mean, it's a part of their building, so we don't see bills from that facility. Same thing for Elgin. Elgin happens in their city hall, in the actual chamber at City Hall, and we don't see anything from the city for that either.
I mean, is it possible in the future under a different mayor, or if the city has a huge budget deficit, that they can start sending us bills? I mean,
That would
we
be
should
up to the
prepare for in the
16th
future?
Judicial Circuit and the Chief Judge's Office. I think we'd
They deal with
defer to the
state-
state's attorney because it really is not a building or IT function. We just work with what we're told to do. So, yeah.
Oh, the state attorney's function or judicial, not so much the county. Huh?
Mike?
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, we don't own it, we're not leasing it.
Mm-mm.
The city of Aurora is maintaining it. They could possibly send us a bill in the future, but as far as we understand for right now, that the deal's directly with the state then, not with the
I-
county board.
I'm not going to speak for anybody, but some of the times when we've talked about it, it's for their jurisdictional benefit. So they pay for that to be in their municipality. So that's my understanding of it, is that they want to have the adjudication and the judicial process in there.
Okay.
So it helps with their lockup. They can release people from their lockup from the bench. They can hold hearings on the weekend. I think they do misdemeanor. They do some others.
That may have been the old court was back in the
Yeah.
sixties and seventies.
Yeah.
Until this new place was built. Okay. I was curious, like,
That'd be maybe a good
we
question.
talk about it, but I'm not hearing
Yeah.
that we own it.
I'm fairly certain I've never seen anything that indicates we have any interest in the property itself,
Okay, okay.
but it'd be a good question maybe for the chief judge's office.
I was curious. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so
Are there questions on those particular subjects?
yeah, and
Okay,
these are just
next.
breakdowns of the different plans that we just discussed. So in the short term, one of the things that I wanted to bring up was that, and Blair, did Brian join yet from JLL? Okay, so we have Brian Carroll from JLL. He's been the broker for the county for the past year, basically, working on different properties with us. We've talked with him and looked at different things that would be properties for lease or for sale that could potentially address some of the office constraints, could potentially address some of the satellite office things that we're looking at, and then also looking at space for warehouse storage and potentially OEM. And I even would say that some of the lease space could address things that are going on in terms of CASA. To some extent, we've talked about buildings in Aurora for those satellite offices. I think that the thing that I wanted to get from the committee is, given all of the circumstances, fiscal, all the construction projects we have going on and otherwise, what's the pleasure of the committee regarding, the demand for office space, the things that operationally OEM needs to be doing for their vehicles and storage and their office needs? Do we want to deal with the CASA lease? Then you get into warehouse and garage space. We probably have a 10,000 square foot need for just certain OEM vehicles that need to be brought in. We have about 50,000 in warehousing and vehicles. If we were to take all of the stuff from the offices and merge it to an actual warehouse, we could use that much space to store things. And that includes, not to speak for the county clerk's office, but to get a better loading dock and shipping area for all the voting equipment. They're operating out of a former retail store, and it doesn't have the truck bays and lift gates and things that are drop gates that you need for moving a couple thousand pieces of equipment in a day. So they do some things that are a little unorthodox, but that's something that would be yet to be determined. This is still early in the process. We're looking for direction on, whether or not to pursue these things, or do we put these things on the back burner for right now to take a wait and see attitude. We have Brian on the phone. Brian's been working with us trying to identify things to see, is there any interest in these? And before we go any further or have him do any more work, I wanted to kind of set the tone, set the direction, and see if that's the pleasure of the committee. So that's where I'll leave it.
Okay, Mr. Arroyo.
I'll be quick. Okay. No, it's something to look into. The city of Aurora is moving their maintenance garage to a centralized location into Page County. They're gonna be abandoning their current one on Broadway in 25. Michelle, you know, doing it with that, the old garage?
I think there's plans from the city of Aurora for that
Yeah,
property.
Aurora's abandoning their maintenance garage in downtown Aurora. I think it's in your district. On the corner of 25 in Illinois.
25 in Illinois?
It's all police vehicles now and maintenance vehicles.
Okay, I know where that's at.
Yeah, they're abandoning it in next few months.
Hmm.
So maybe something to look at.
Any other
It's
questions?
already ready built.
About the direction we might want to be going in this, Ms. Juby?
No, I have a question about the last thing about the old Montgomery Ward building. Can I
Yes,
ask that here?
The what?
sure.
Montgomery Ward building that the circuit clerk is in?
I think that's what we're discussing is.
No, we're
those,
discussing going ahead with lease or sale opportunities with our realtor. I would like to go back to the previous question because I was waiting to get an answer. You said that there were no loading docks in that building. There were 3 or 4 loading docks in
Yeah.
that building when Montgomery Ward sold it. So did we remove those?
Well, so I wasn't in charge of building management at that time, but when they renovated the building to put the branch court and move the circuit clerk used to be in the north end of the building where the storage is now. When they decided to make that a permanent home and move from a lease to a purchase, they bought the building. In that period of time, they moved the circuit clerk to the south end of the building, renovating the entire clerk's office and vault and moving them in to the south end of the building. Okay, at that time, there were 3 loading docks and 1 kind of dumpster bay in the back. Those couple of loading docks at that time were pushed to the circuit clerk side. Then the next step in, they built the branch court, which is traffic and misdemeanor and other branch court operations. At that time, just to the north of the loading docks, in the back behind the branch court, they put in a sally port and a holding area for people being detained out of court. So they severed the loading docks, they severed the truck bays, and there is a holding area and sally port between all of that and the north end of the building where you store things.
And could that Sally port be removed?
You could, the sally port, I think, had a price tag north of $1 million to put it in. So they do actually pull people out of court if they have a warrant or they are looking for that person. They'll pull them, put them in holding, and then they'll transport them over to the jail out of the sally
I
port.
guess I should do the question
Yeah.
differently if you'll allow me. Is there a
Yeah.
way, if we no longer need that Sally port for detaining, that we could reinstate those 3 52-foot loading docks?
You could, if, you'd have to tear up a lot of that structure. You could get to those loading docks from that area. It is possible. It is possible. It used to be that way. There are a series of doors between the loading docks and the storage area. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 4 sets of double doors before you would get back there. So it's not like a straight entry. That's the only
I
other
just wanted
problem.
to know if we could
Yeah.
return it to its original state, because you said there were no loading docks, and I knew that building did have loading docks. at
And not on the
time.
warehouse side. There's
Okay,
none.
thank you.
Yeah.
And the finance, how much it would cost would be an important factor.
Yeah, I wouldn't even want to guess at the cost, but I'm assuming to tear out all the holding cells and could get expensive, but
That worth looking into then for?
I
Mitsubishi, or-
would argue that the courts and the sheriff and state's attorney, they'd have to weigh in on whether or not that's feasible because they use it. It's not us.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah, I was just trying to determine, because it was a disconnect and something that I thought I knew, and it maybe changes. If we relocate that, then that maybe changes our space needs for something else. So just.
Yeah.
curious,
If you're getting out of that space, it certainly could be a different use.
Which I thought was the point of getting out of that space. So, okay, thank you.
Could be.
Right,
It's
that's-
kind of a one or the other kind of thing. If you're in the space, you can't do it. If you're out of the space, you could renovate it.
You gotta have someplace to go.
Yeah, you have to, you'd have to find a place to put the branch court and the circuit clerk.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Young, do you have a
David
question or
Young,
comment?
yes. Just following up on Leslie Juby, the equipment, the election equipment is the biggest concern for having a loading dock, correct?
Yeah, Mr.
There's also probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 square feet with linear rack feet to the ceiling of files.
That's on the
It's on
south side.
pallets and boxes, just the whole side of the building. So that they do use like forklifts and pallet jacks to move records, pallets, just so clear.
That on the south side in the clerk's office?
No, it's in the storage area. It's
Oh.
to the south end of the storage. It's State's Attorney, KDOT, and a couple other divisions have records stored in a good portion.
That answer? the-
No,
more?
maybe I haven't been there, but if
Okay.
they have pallet racks and all this other stuff, then they're obviously using a forklift over there. So you can put the election equipment on a forklift. You should be able to put that on a forklift, move it with a forklift. And so having a loading dock like you would as if you were going to be moving retail like TVs and furniture and stuff in and out of like you would at the old Montgomery Ward building. It sounds like, I don't even know if, to me, why is it even necessary? If you're doing it now with forklifts and pallet jacks and you have and all you need to do is maybe add some more rack. I think we're already, why are we even talking about it? Because it sounds like we're dealing with it now.
Well, I'm going to say, I think it's more complicated than it's more access to the loading docks, but don't want to speak out. I will, if this is something that we have an interest in looking forward to, we have Roger maybe do an in-depth thing on this. Was that, so it's a clear for the rest of the committee? I'm getting lots of nods from everybody.
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, meetings aren't long enough. More information for our new people, would that be valuable to you? But does that make sense to you, Roger? Mr.
It
Fonson?
does. I just sent Blair a couple pictures so you
Oh.
can kind of visualize what this looks like.
Picture's
Uh,
worth 1,000 words?
Yeah, it'll give you an idea when you want to see what is in your storage space, Blair. I sent them to both the moderator and to you, Blair. That's fine. Yeah. But, so the question, I guess, is really just the direction. Do we want to go a particular direction? If you want to learn more about the space, we could dig into it deeper, what potential changes you have for, say, the North Campus. We've looked at different ways to store things in that location, and it is very full. You'll see from the pictures what we're talking about. So I don't know, when you talk about putting in pallet jacks or forklifts, or you can't go any higher really, and it's full. So that's what our challenge is. And then there's people that are bringing things over and they're storing them on the floor in the aisle where the forklift or pallet jack would go. So we have to, constantly maneuver around things to situate stuff. So anyway, the real objective was to try to get direction about if you wanted to entertain leasing office space, or trying to look at purchasing office space, or if you wanted to deal with warehousing. So this is the row of records that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's the density, and it actually goes all the way down. I think it goes to the right, and there's pretty much very little of any shelf space left. Those boxes are full.
Raiders of the Lost Ark there.
Yeah. And then Blair, the other picture I sent was the elections area, and it was just a snapshot of the floor. That's fine. Just take your time, but you didn't see it go through and then send it yet. All right, Blair.
Is
I
Is
just-
that a concrete floor there, or is that a?
It is concrete. I will tell you that they moved in and occupied it as is. The floor has actually got the original adhesive and mastic from the tile floor that was there, so it's very rough. It's like rough surface, not real conducive to having people walk on or roll things over. And that's something that the clerk actually asked us about this year was, can we get somebody to grind and polish the floor? So that's what the other side looks like with the election equipment. And the empty space and the space on the floor is where they used to navigate those carts, roll them in and out of the aisles. I think, Charles, there's just under 1,300 voting units that are in there. And then there's somewhere around, I think, 200 poll books that they set up. It's 2 for each polling place or precinct, 250, something like
Mr.
that.
Chair,
Mr. Raw.
that floor is unsealed, and I was over there at
Yep.
training class, and it's very dirty because of the pallets and stuff, which isn't good for election equipment.
Okay. Thank you for that input. And the rest was from the county clerk. Ms. Gomes, do you have a comment or question?
Sure.
Quick question. There's no unused space at the new Elgin building, correct?
You know what, we have a group of people doing the concept plan. And what you're gonna find is that there's gonna be vacant space when they're done. I mean, they don't have at least as far as I'm concerned, maybe that's my opinion, but they don't have enough programs and services to fill the building. I'm gonna say 46,000 square feet. If we fill half of it, So you might find 20,000 square feet when you're done. And that'll be, again, it's primarily office space. It's not a warehouse, but it does have some double doors, and you could do some, what I'd call light office storage. It's not an industrial warehouse though.
Thank you.
I think we
Yeah.
got some in the coroner's office over here.
Yeah, we can move it from the coroner's office up to the
Gosh.
old coroner's
So
office.
the question that you are posing, Mr. Fonstock, is,
Yeah.
is there a consensus from the committee to, or anybody else is sitting in here to look at leasing and or purchasing? Do you think, do we need more information on the cost differences between leasing and purchasing? Or just to go ahead and look at those?
Yeah,
leasing
I
and
think,
purchase storage area?
I had given some examples like 5,000 square feet. We had an example property for 5,000 square feet that's in this area, very close, proximate to us, probably somewhere in the $120,000 a year to lease 5,000 square feet. And that would alleviate, 5,000 square feet of office space, particularly at the government center, possibly some of the people at Third Street, but maybe OEM, maybe some offices here that moved to there in order to give OEM or 911 more space, or some of the offices in this building that need additional space. But at $120,000 a year, you could lease 5,000 square feet of space to alleviate that pressure. The prospect of a warehouse or a garage space, I will tell you, it's been strange. Brian can probably speak to this. The warehouse space combination industrial warehouse office is actually renting or selling for more than office space. So we looked at a building in this immediate area that's about another 40,000+ square feet. And the asking price was just a little over $100 a square foot. So it was about, I think it was around $4.5–5 million. And the building that we purchased in Elgin was just over 50 and for the office space. So office industrial, the cost per square foot in this area was almost double what we paid for the office space
In
per
Elgin?
square foot. Yes. That much different. So the industrial warehouse space that I've seen here was $4.5–5 million for about 40, I think it was 43,000 square feet.
And Mr. Gripe?
Thank
Or,
you.
yeah, any other
Okay.
committee members, or
I just have a question.
we have
It probably
Sonia
goes-
first and then Mr. Gripe? Is that okay?
And probably goes more towards the state attorney with the files. Do we need to keep them in boxes? Is there any way that we can go ahead and file them? Or all those files that we have there, what are their contains?
So forgive me, which files are we talking about?
The ones in the warehouse or the boxes? What are they?
There are lots of different file structures and things. I don't know what they are because we don't go through any of it. That's their space to store things in. Some of the things we've heard is, if we had the staff to sit and scan and go through all of them, they could digitize. But at the same time, some of them I think have to remain the way they are because, unless you have to go through all the destruction protocols and retention. So the overhead is incredible to go through all those to figure that out.
So just to even give you an example, the civil division went digital, and we still have to hold all written records for 10 years, even though we're scanning stuff in, we still have to hold it. And it's because of the Local Records Act. So that applies countywide. It won't necessarily be 10 years, but you should be thinking about a transition to digital over a decade rather than over months or a couple of years. It would be my recommendation for everyone to think about it that way.
Long term. Anybody? Oh, sorry, Mr. Gripe? Yes.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer your question, I guess a couple things occur to me is that when you have people and stuff, I'll use that generic term, in an office, may not be the best use of that space versus all people or all stuff. Not that that's an option. But I'm wondering to what extent that could be looked at, is building X better for people based on
Sure.
whatever criteria, and you've talked about several of them, Roger. And maybe we could consolidate the stuff in another place that's going to be more cost efficient. And then lastly, if you ask the people in that area, those that lead that operation in building X, in my example, saying, okay, you want additional space, help us find it. I know my aunt used to come into our house and redecorate despite my mom's best interest, but it always amazed us because we didn't see it until we looked. And so I'm just thinking, hey, you know, I'll pick on civil division, not that they need to be picked on, but you want some additional office space? Help us find it. Maybe an opportunity.
I think that we are looking at and except like you were saying, some of those offers all the time, Roger.
Mhm.
Just a side there. Ms. Juby.
You know,
So the question was whether we should continue to see what's available. So as long as that exploration of those things doesn't imply a commitment, I would always be curious what's out there.
okay.
So I would be in favor of exploring as long as it's not committing. Because I don't know that we can afford to commit to anything right now, but
Yeah.
if we don't know our options, and I would also be in favor, just me personally, of us trying to relocate the people out of that building on Randall Road and convert that back to a space situation. Because I think you're correct. When you mix people and things, it's not the best use of property. So if in your search, you find something with the right location closer to the judicial to take care of the people situation, that to me would be a higher priority than if we found a space for something else.
So
Comment?
one of the discussions that we've had is, you know, if you were to find, you know, what would be storage space, you would have the north end of that building that could be renovated into office space. It's right on Randall with parking, and that was a concept that we had kicked around. Not using more of the building for storage, but trying to put people in it. Some of the other questions that we get, which we would defer to the county board, is we can find space. There's space available for office space. A lot of the resistance or reluctance that we get from the offices and departments is that they want it to be in the space they're in now or adjacent to it. They don't want their people split, or so we would look at, say, moving a department out to a lease space and then expanding an office that's next door to it. And so the closest example is Building C. You know, we have the GIS department, which Charles is helping to run with Kurt. We have CaneCom and OEM. If we could take one of them out of that scenario and move them, say, down the street, we would get, you know, half of a floor, 2,000 or 3,000 square feet by moving them. And it would be space adjoining those areas now. So the lease, you know, value of that might be 120,000 a year to have that kind of flexibility. So that's the question. Would you entertain like a letter of intent or interest in a lease like that? Or would you just want to see more information we could present, like what that would look like in detail?
I would not be in favor of entertaining any type of letter of intent until we saw what was available. And going back to the
Yeah.
Randall Road property, I was under the impression they wanted to be closer to the judicial. So if that's
Too.
not the case, then by all means, find another, you know, for storage. But I was just trying to
Too.
go by what I had heard anecdotally. So.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge is they fit into that like second grouping where it's like expanding the judicial center to accommodate the circuit clerk and more courtrooms. And that's a big proposition. I mean, most of the numbers that we saw started in the $80 million and went up from there. So that's kind of I guess the fear factor.
So I'm gonna say that we've been doing this for about 50 minutes here, so this is all good discussion. But we're leaning toward you providing us more information on either leasing or buying, and we're certainly not opposed to it in this committee. I'm getting that from everybody, yeah. More information's better, because we don't want to, like, some of these oddball ones that Ms. Gums was talking about, brought up that we were doing, we can bring those as well to the committee. But Those are, it
What
wasn't oddball
oddball?
on your part.
What
It was-
oddball thing?
Well, it was like you, not, it wasn't you oddball. It was the offer to buy that building from us for like a fraction of the price. That was their oddball thing. But we didn't bring it to committee because it was like, if we got $7 million out of that, and we'd have to buy a $20 million building. So,
I understand.
no.
But you understand the-
Oddball,
the-
sorry.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
I know you
I know what
are,
you
but
mean.
that's not what I meant this time. Sorry. So
But I,
you're
to the
certainly
point,
to the right.
to that point though, Chris,
We're diverging.
Mr.
though.
Chair, is just that it can be problematic for things to come to members of this committee that we are like, what are you
And
talking about?
I'm
right?
glad you brought it up because it's important and we should be getting that
Yeah,
information to everybody.
Just to be clear though, and I don't know of any conversations that anyone had of any serious context about selling any of our buildings.
Yeah.
Especially the health department. I know there was discussions at one point in time, kind of hypothetically, well, if we were to buy this building and sell those buildings, people had conversations like that, but there's never been any formal discussion with brokers or otherwise about any of the buildings being sold. So,
Okay, so we'll be feeding more information.
yeah,
Roger, your department will
Sure.
be feeding more information to the committee about that sort of thing. Is that,
Absolutely.
will that
Yep.
wrap that up pretty much then? Then we'll move on. I think, or did you have more in that area?
no, I think it's clear. We'll try to bring some examples of what the leases look like in properties and maybe some of the storage facilities in properties. And you can look at them and if there's something that you'd like us to pursue. I think our concern was entertaining or talking to people any further without getting solid direction, what
Right.
the board wants.
Yeah. So I'm getting a consensus that we want to always be informed on stuff
Yeah.
like that. So
Fair.
I think that's a kind of a no-brainer. We're good. Okay, then on to billing management. I think that's to you again, Roger.
Yeah. So we do have a guest
County
here.
Electric Program.
Yes. And I'll let him do his introduction, Arnie Schramel.
Oh,
right?
Arnie. Hey, I thought I saw
From
you back there.
Progressive
Arnie
Energy,
Schramm.
but he's here to talk to us a little bit about the electric program and what we've been doing and seeing as it relates to our energy. So that I'll turn it over.
Well,
Arnie.
actually, what I'm going to do is, before we do that, because that's Resolution B, is that correct? Or is that, this is just a
no.
presentation, eh?
Just a
Okay.
presentation, just to give you an
excuse me.
update.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm Arnie Schrammel. I'm one of the managing partners of Progressive Energy Group. We've been working with the county for the last 6 years on your solar installation at your judicial center, electric procurement, and your aggregation programs. Today, I just wanted to give you a quick update on kind of the energy markets. I generally like to keep these informal, so if you got questions as I'm going through, please raise your hand or ask me a question. I also have to warn you, I'm a CPA by nature, so my presentations tend to have lots of numbers and stuff on them, so I apologize for that up front.
They're fast numbers. We don't care.
But that's how we were trained. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So this slide kind of shows the wholesale power for the since back in 2011. And this is just for the raw electrons. And you can see there was a gradual decline in pricing to about 2020, then it started ticking up. And then prices went crazy, mainly due to the Ukraine war. Both natural gas and electric prices went berserk for a while. The county was mostly protected because the county was in a long-term deal through most of that volatility. The county did sign a new deal late last year, but the prices are up from their lows. And if you want to go to the next slide. So, that we're in what they call the PJM West territory. And I just put this on there. So if you take our prices today from where the absolute low was, the raw price of power is up about 87% from the absolute low price about 5 years ago. Now, where's it going in the next 3 or 4 years? It seems like it's still going to track up a little bit over the next couple of years. If we can go to the next slide. So what is capacity? Capacity is an industry term to make sure there's enough power in the grid 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. These are basically payments paid to power plants to be online to provide enough power. And those prices have gone up significantly from just a year ago. We were around $29 a megawatt day. Starting June 1st of 2025, it's going up to almost $270 a megawatt day. So what's the impact of that? The impact on the average residential ComEd customer, the price is now just under 7 cents a kilowatt hour. It's going to raise the price to just over 9 cents a kilowatt hour. What's the impact on the county? There's some good news for the county. Your largest user by far is your jail judicial center. It's about 10 million kilowatt hours a year. Your solar field up there mitigates most of this increase. And why is that? When they do capacity, it's two things. One is the price, and then they're looking at what did your facility use in the 5 highest hours of the grid. So what solar does a very good job of is produces lots of power when the grid's at its max. And your solar field at your judicial center, what we call primary load contribution numbers that used to be around 1,400 are all the way down to 200 now. Again, because your solar field is producing lots of power when the grid's at its peak. And most residential or small businesses experience the same thing. But just for a regular ComEd customer, again, the price is going up significantly starting in June of this year. And this will also impact some of your smaller facilities. But again, the county by far, your largest user is the judicial/jail. If we go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about power plant retirements. As many of you know, there's been a lot of power plant retirements over the last 12 years. Mostly coal and oil, a few natural gas. If we go to the next slide, and there's a lot more power plants scheduled to be retired over the next couple of years. Now, you know, we had a change in administration. So this 2026, it's called the EPA Good Neighbor Rule, which is set to shut down a lot of coal plants kind of in the southeast United States. That got suspended by the Supreme Court, sent back to the EPA. So I expect with the current administration, a lot of that's not going to happen. I expect those coal plants to stay online for a while. If you go to the far right, the other one here is, and this is really specific to Illinois under the CEJA Act, there's a bunch of natural gas peaker plants scheduled to be shut down in 2030. My guess is a lot of those are not going to be shut down by 2030, and I'll get into that in a few minutes, primarily due to two things. One is the anticipated solar wind build out is slower than anticipated. And two, for the first time in 20 years, we actually have significant demand growth for electricity. If we go to the next slide, it kind of explains that. So you can see this is the electric growth slide. You know, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there's a lot of growth in electric demand as houses got electrified, air conditioning came in, computers, a lot more stuff. But for the last 20 years, there's been almost zero electric growth. In ComEd, the actual peak kilowatt hours was back in 2008. So in the ComEd territory, we're using less power today than we did back in 2008. And most of that's energy conservation. The modern lighting uses way less power. Modern appliances are much more efficient. Modern air conditioners, HVAC equipment. So it's not just the newer homes, but you know, most facilities after 15, 20 years replace their HVAC equipment. And the stuff coming in is way more efficient than the stuff being retired. But what's recently happened is the explosion of the data centers. In data centers, it's hard for me to describe how much power data centers use. So I live down in Aurora and we do aggregation there. If you took every residential home in Aurora, every apartment in Aurora, every small business, that I define as under 15,000 kilowatt hours. The whole city of Aurora uses about 460 million kilowatt hours a year. Aurora's got 2 data centers operating today, one being built, another probably going to start being built this year. Each one of those data centers, once built out, is going to use over 300 million kilowatt hours apiece. So the 4 data centers in Aurora, they use, a couple 100% more than every residential home, every apartment in the city of Aurora. So the amount of power these data centers is, again, for me, it's hard to describe how much power is going through those facilities. And if we go to the next slide, in Illinois, that's kind of the good news, bad news, is Illinois is actually a big data center hub. There's a lot of data centers already in Aurora, and there's expected to be a lot more built in Aurora, or not in Aurora, in Illinois. But that's also going to put a lot more demand on the power that wasn't anticipated even in 2021. So this is kind of like new stuff that's hitting the industry. The industry is still trying to figure out where this additional power is coming from. And there's a lot of discussions going on that right now. If we go to the next slide quick, I normally don't talk about this, but it's been in the news quite a bit about the U.S. imports of Canadian oil and the potential of tariffs on that Canadian oil. So if you look in this, I guess would be on the left side of that graph, the U.S. does import oil today. It's a little bit misleading the way I look at it, because the U.S. since 2020 is a net exporter of oil and oil products. So what the U.S. is doing is importing raw crude oil. We have an abundance of refinery capacity, and net, we're exporting a lot more gasoline, diesel fuel, aviation fuel, kerosene than we're importing. So the USA has some of the best refineries in the world, very productive. We haven't built one since 1977. That's also misleading. A lot of these refineries have been completely rebuilt. They're much more efficient. And what they're doing in Canada has what they call very heavy oil, low-grade oil. And that low-grade oil is shipped into the U.S. There's a big price discount on that oil. It's refined. A lot of it's refined here in the Chicago area, Whiting, Indiana, the Exxon Mobil down by Elwood. Those refineries are specifically set up and built and operate to use this tar sands oil coming out of Northwest Canada. Now, what does that do? That really drives down the price of our gasoline, because we're buying cheaper oil from Canada than we're actually selling on the world market. A lot of the fracking oil in the U.S. is actually very high quality oil. It doesn't need nearly as much refinery. And that stuff is a lot of that's being exported out. I don't know if there's any questions on this. There's a lot of information here.
Everybody? Continue.
I was going to ask, the other question that I get asked is, which country produces the most oil in the world?
United States, yeah.
United States does. The United States is producing 13.4 million barrels per day. And then Russia and Saudi Arabia are about just over 10.5 apiece.
What do I win?
You see me after the meeting. Sorry?
I was going to say he gets a couple.
Oh.
Some oil? I get oil? Oh, boy.
So if we go to the next slide, the next major fuel source in the United States is natural gas. Again, who's the largest natural gas producer in the world?
U.S.
The U.S. by a long shot. The U.S. is producing just over 1 trillion cubic meters a year. The next closest is Russia. They're at 600. So the U.S. is producing, if you get by Russia, the third is Iran at 263. So the U.S. is way outproducing the rest of the world on natural gas. Now, what you can see here is this is really the fracking explosion. We were down here in the 70, 75 BCF a day. not that long ago. It's not ancient history, back in 2016, 2017. And, this graph doesn't show it, but just last week, we were at 106 BCF a day of natural gas production. Where's all that extra production going? About half of it's being exported. The US never used to export. If you go back or go one more slide. Or I'm sorry, go forward. So you can see back in 2016, the United States didn't export any natural gas. And now we're exporting about 15 BCF a day, and it's going to 30. And people go, is it really going to double again? And I tell them yes, because these export facilities are under construction right now. And they'll be finished up being built here in the next couple of years. So we'll be exporting probably over 30 BCF of gas here in just a few years. And what that's done is it's raised the prices in the US because we had a very big oversupply of natural gas. But now that we're exporting it primarily to Asia and Europe, our prices have gone up because there's more demand or ability to get rid of the natural gas out of North America. If you want to go forward one slide, and you can kind of see this, you got the same thing here back in 22, 23, prices really shot up. Ukraine war related prices came back quite a bit, but now they're gradually moving back up again. I just want to talk about the Clean Energy Jobs Act a little bit, because actually that's going to be if you want to go one more slide. That was passed in September of 21. It took about 2 years for that bill to pass, but it was really meant to get the state of Illinois to 100% clean energy in 3 decades. And there was all kinds of stuff, it's 988 pages long, but there's also another couple hundred pages of additional stuff after that. But it did mandate the closure of the coal and natural gas plants by 2045. Now, right now, there's 0 coal plants in the ComEd territory. Every coal plant in the ComEd territory has been closed. When I say closed, they've been closed and dismantled and hauled away. There are 3 coal plants in Southern Illinois. 2 are medium sized, and then there's the big Peabody one that actually services Naperville, Geneva, St. Charles, Batavia with some of their power. I think Batavia, maybe all their power. That thing right now, Peabody is scheduled under the current CJ Act to be shut down in 2035. But I expect some of that stuff is going to get pushed back. And I can pick on the natural gas Elgin Energy Center. That plant was scheduled to be shut down June 1st of this year. With the prices of capacity that went up, that plant was getting about $6 million a year in payments to be online. That's going to grow to like $35 million a year starting June 1st. So they were getting 6. They had to rebuild a lot of those gen sets. They're gas turbines. Imagine a big jet engine, really big jet engine, running on natural gas to a gen set. Those are at their end of their life. They're $10 to $15 million per unit to rehab to get them back online, to extend their life out for 10 years. They had 4 of them up there. So they were looking at a $40 to $60 million capital plan to rebuild those gen sets. When they were making $6 million a year, the math never made sense to do. It was much simpler to shut it down. But now that they're going to be getting over $30 million a year, it makes financial sense for the owners to keep that thing running for another 5, 6 years. But again, a lot of that's related to these data centers. And that was nothing that was anticipated when the CEJA bill was passed, the Clean Energy Jobs Act. The state of Illinois, the Illinois Commerce Commission is doing workshops on that right now. There's one next week. They're doing them every couple of weeks. And this Illinois legislature is going to take a hard look at CEJA this spring and see what they're going to do with this anticipated big increase in demand. Because the current bill never anticipated this big increase in electric demand. And, if we force these plants offline, we just won't have enough power here in northern Illinois. We do have plenty of power plants. We're good, like I tell people, if you pick on this Elgin Energy Center, yes, it's a natural gas plant, but it only runs about 400 hours a year. So it's only on the grid about 5% of actual hours in a year. It's really there for the peak loads. And these natural gas peaker plants do a good job. They can come online real fast and they can shut down real fast. Very different than a coal plant or a nuclear plant. We go to the next slide. This was kind of the specific targets, the CEJA, utility scale, community solar, commercial industrial. The bill did give the Illinois Power Authority, though, a lot of flexibility to move dollars around between the buckets. There's not been very many new wind builds in Illinois the last 4 years, but there have been quite a few solar, so they're moving stuff around. But under CEJA, we're way behind the anticipated goals. We're only about 50% of what the CEJA goals were for solar and wind build out. And a lot of that is just, it's interconnection issues with the utilities. And it's also just, a lot of people don't want this stuff built near them. And it's getting harder and harder to get these things zoned and built.
We've seen that.
Yeah, and it's not just Kane County, it's all over. So if we go to the next slide, CEJA was a $9.5 billion bill. Not going to go through all the line items, but
Thank you.
if you go just to the bottom, what's the impact, for a residential customer? The average impact is about $11 a month or $112 a year once this thing is fully out. So that's your ComEd distribution and taxes for the average residential customer between when the bill was passed in 2021 to 2031. The average residential ComEd customer's bill will go up $112 a year. For Kane County, it's about $122,000 a year. Because there's money going in. Now, there's a lot of money going in. What you got to do is take advantage of it. And if you can, get in some of these solar things, do these energy efficiency projects, because the money is all getting recycled. And I think the county has been doing a good job on energy efficiency projects. You built a solar system that was the largest you could build when you built it. And I know you're looking at more solar on more facilities in the future, but that's how you get your money back. And then the final slide, I get questions on residential solar, business solar, community solar. And I tell people I got solar on my house. I got solar on my office building. I don't like when people say so you get all your money back in a year or two. It takes longer than that. Now, solar absolutely pays for itself. I'm a big fan of it. The average residential payback is about 7 years on solar. It's very low maintenance. Obviously it's not producing a lot of power today, but it does a very good job of producing power when the grid needs lots of power. Business and governmental, the payback is actually faster. It's 5 years. And that's the primary difference is businesses can depreciate solar systems. And I'll pick on your judicial center solar system. That's actually not owned by the county, but there's a business that owns it that also gets to depreciate that solar field. And the last one is community solar. If you get a chance to sign up for community solar, do it. I used to joke that, there's two sure things in life. You're going to pay taxes, you're going to die. The third one is you will save money under Illinois community solar programs. It's a little bit complicated, but you're going to save 10% on your energy supply, which is roughly 5 to 8% of your total ComEd bill. Now, these things fill up fast. And we're trying to get the county into some of these programs here in the next year or so. But they're very good programs. Just to define community solar, these are fields built in generally rural Illinois. And they're meant, not everybody can put solar on their house. They might have, if you have a roof that's 10 or 15 years old, tell people it's really not worth it because yes, there's a lot of incentives for solar. There's no incentives to pull your solar system off your roof, replace your roof, and reinstall solar. There's no incentive money for that. So if you want to install solar, you really need a roof that's pretty good and pretty new. You know, with that, I know I've run a little bit long. If there's any questions.
Okay, anything for Arnie? Thanks. We're looking at and the ideas, this is about what we can expect from our power bills in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, your power bills on average are going to go up a little over $250,000 a year
For us.
between ComEd and your energy supply.
You had a question, Mr. Young?
I do.
Or
David,
comment?
both, David Young. Just a couple weeks ago, President Trump he's really pushing the AI. And so all of these data centers are going to start popping up. And he was saying that each data center should have its own power source right next to it. Okay. And he also said that in the future, the United States will need 2 times more power than what they have today. And if we're going to get rid of coal-fired plants throughout the United States, here in Illinois, I don't even know how that, and you mentioned it with those data centers in Aurora, how are you going to even power them if the coal power plants are removed and you can't do nuclear? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, two things there. Like in Illinois, the coal plants are pretty much extinct already. I mean, and they're not coming back. We do have significant natural gas resources, and we do, and we're going to have more and more wind and solar. I really believe that's the answer. And it's not just the Aurora plants. You know, some of you are familiar with the Facebook out in DeKalb. You know, that's even a bigger data center. That uses 500 million kilowatt hours a year. Sugar Grove's looking at installing a data center. I mean, there's a lot. I'm not sure how you build power plants next to them. They're generally built where there's big substations or transmission substations. The other thing that's, I believe is going to happen is some of these nuclear power plants will get uprated. So I'll pick on one that's a real example. So most of you have heard of 3 Mile Island. There's actually 3 different reactors at 3 Mile Island. One obviously back in the late 80s, I guess. No, late 70s. Late 70s went critical, and that reactor's been shut down. They actually mothballed the nuclear reactor. They've got one up and running. They actually mothballed one of the nuclear reactors 4 years ago. Just 4 months ago, Constellation Energy, the owner, and Microsoft struck a deal where they're going to reactivate that shut down nuclear reactor. And they're building a data center right next to it. Now they're going to spend almost $1 billion reactivating that reactor, getting like a 25-year license from the NRC to extend the life out of that plant. I think you're going to see more of that happen, or you're going to see what happened at the Elgin Energy Center, where they got these gas turbines. They're existing. They're at the end of their life. We're going to retire them. But now that they're getting extra money, that's like, wait a minute, we'll rebuild these gas turbines and keep them online for another 10, 15 years as we continue to build out more renewables. That's what I believe is going to happen. You're going to upgrade nuclear plants. You're going to continue building out wind and solar. And 3, the natural gas plants are going to be around for a long time.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Young? Any other comments or questions? like to thank you for presenting. Oh, excuse me,
Yeah,
Mr.
one-
Gripe.
One kind of quick one. Yeah, my son-in-law used to manage the solar environment or the solar operation. for
Into the
him.
microphone, please.
My son-in-law used to help operate the solar fields for Ameren, which is a ComEd down south, and has some interesting comments about solars, but its limitations on its ability. He said you'd have to pave the top 10th of Illinois with solar fields from Iowa to the lake to be able to get the kind of power that you're going to need to do these kinds of things. But my current and King County question, if you could go back to page 42, there's a picture there, Blair, page 42. And I have taken it upon myself to go start looking at solar fields around the county. And what you see here is what would be nice is flora and possibly fauna running around under these. I have yet to find one that isn't a weeded out, dirt blown mess. And so I talked to the folks in our zoning department. I said, I'm just curious, when somebody gets the permission to build a solar field in Kane County, are there expectations on how the dirt under it is maintained? And, oh, yes, that we have commitments to maintain it. Well, I think there's been a disconnect, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody here, but there's an opportunity to do that. And my wife's landscape designer, she went nuts. And opportunities to make this land do what it should be doing under it. It's not easy, but it's possible. And I'd love to see how we could possibly get the places to look more like this instead of, I mean, go over and look at the one in the Judicial Center sometime. It'll fry your brain.
It's a,
That picture is actually at Moose Heart. And it's been very difficult to get the native species to get going. We've had some bad droughts, we've had too much rain. And then I'm not a person, but at Moose, they were saying the best thing to do is if we could burn this thing, that would really get the vegetation going. But how do you burn this thing when you got solar panels sitting a foot away? But I'm hoping that there'll be people a lot smarter than me that figure out how to do stuff like that, because I agree with you. Most of these ground mount solar fields are full of noxious weeds.
yeah, the one I've seen, Moose Heart looks great, I think, but I haven't seen it in a while.
The
Mr. Rush?
judicial one, a voter approached me in August complaining the weeds were 9 feet tall. I approached Jody and Roger because there actually was 2 entities involved with the plantings there. The solar company is responsible for planting stuff like this, and they hadn't done it because of the drought and stuff. But they cut all the weeds down within a month of my stating, and then the county is responsible for all the property outside the fence. And I just followed up with Jody about a month ago, and they planted, and it should start coming up in the spring.
Would that also go through John Mall in our code violation?
I didn't take that approach. I took the nice approach and approached Jody directly and then copied Mavis on it
Yeah.
too. And
Well,
worked
quicker
with
the better.
Roger.
okay. All right. Well, thanks, Arnie. Then we better move on. This was an hour-long meeting. It's already an hour and a half. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a resolution. May I have a motion in a second to present, potentially approve a resolution authorizing a contract extension for architect, engineer, and construction manager services. Contacts with White and Company, Healy Bender, Patent and Bean Incorporated, and Helmuth, Obata and Casabon Incorporated, HOK. That's RFQ number 42-020, moved by
Juby moves.
Juby, second by Arroyo. All right, Mr. Fonstock, is
Yeah.
that you?
So this was the result of a request for qualifications where we qualified architect and engineering services. This is the third of 3 renewals for this. What we do is do the initial concept plans, planning, and initial studies of problems in the county, buildings and other things. Those are the things that are like under $30,000. And then we do larger planning operations that would come back based on those concept plans to the board for approval. But we generally have a budget of 600,000, 700,000 in funds to do all of the necessary engineering and studies to get projects started. So this is when you initiate a project and you want to do the preliminary engineering and the initial engineering, and then it comes back for you to actually adopt a budget and a plan, and it becomes a part of the capital plan. But this is the third of three extensions. And then within the next year, we're going to be going out qualifying and looking at the architect engineering again. So we're recommending approval. It's a budgeted expense in the capital fund,
And it's 700,000.
Yes.
Up to 700,000.
up to
a year.
700,000.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Juby, you have your hand up?
Yeah. When is when's their contract up? Is it March?
I believe it was March to March. Yeah.
This is the one we did last year.
Yeah.
Okay, got
We're
it. Yep.
starting one more and then we're going to review them all.
So if it's up, follow-up question, please. If it's up in March, when are we starting the RFQ process?
Probably this summer, we'll be looking at
Okay.
getting it out because we can do it anytime.
Okay,
This falls under the Professional Services Selection Act. So it's a qualifications round. So we're not looking for specific dollar amounts. It's all about their qualifications. So we can do it and qualify them. And we can have as many qualified architects and engineers as we would like. It's who we contract with at that point, is what really matters. That's who's getting the money.
okay. I just didn't want to
Okay.
wait till spring to do that. Just do
For-
the RFQ.
right. You mean next
Process.
spring?
Yeah, I didn't
Oh,
want
okay,
to,
no,
that's
for-
what I thought you
yeah.
said. I was like,
No,
well,
no,
why
no.
would we do that? So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be this probably summer, late summer,
And this is the third of three.
third of three.
And we have the choice, depending on the specialties of any one
Yes.
of the architects provide, of selecting one of those to do any given project,
Yes.
which doesn't put us in a bind
No.
of having only one architect.
A lot of times we'll ask all three of them to draft proposals and tell us how they would recommend doing this. And then we look at the proposals and decide which one would give us a good statement of work.
Okay, roll call, please.
Arroyo. Berman,
Yes.
Garcia,
Garcia, yes.
Gums,
Comes, yes.
Young,
Yes.
Juby,
GBI.
Caius.
Guys, yes. Okay, into information technology, excuse me, right, that's Charles Lasky. May I have a motion in a second to present, potentially approve, a resolution authorizing execution of a master intergovernmental cooperative purchasing agreement with other documents necessary to participate in a purchasing cooperative with AT&T and authorizing the purchase of telecommunication services under SAID agreement by Kane County and is not attached. So I'm assuming everybody got one of these. Yes.
Emailed.
It's digitally as well. Okay, great. Thank you. So, okay, a motion and a second for that, please. Moved by
Comes will move.
Gums, second by
Juby.
Juby. Sleep.
Hi, this is Charles Lasky from the IT department. So this resolution, it was not in the packet because we were working with state's attorney to get this finalized and make sure everything was agreed upon and approved and that we're following all the right protocols with this. Since this was emailed out this morning, we actually have one document that was updated during this meeting. So I sent that to you, Blair. It's an acknowledgement sheet. Because during the review of this, there is a acknowledgement of service order that had a date of 6/11/25. AT&T has changed that date for us, and now it is, let me pull that up.
422.
Yeah, 4/22/2026. So with that final acknowledgement of service, and review by civil state's attorney, they have agreed that this resolution go forward for a one-year renewal of these two services. So everything is in order now. This is a budgeted expense. The services that are under this part of this agreement are for our Kane County, KaneCom and Sheriff Tower locations. So it provides the circuits to those to run the radio system, and also for our POTS lines that are used for burglar and alarm systems, elevators for emergencies, fax lines, and a few other still physical phone lines that are within the county. So it is budgeted and we would recommend approval.
Okay, and the reason we didn't get it long ago, well, there's obviously it
So-
changed today, but
Yeah, so the reason this was not done, so when we started working on this, it's under an Illinois contract with state of Illinois, and working with AT&T, they had said the contract was still in place. What had occurred was the contract had expired, but there was multiple extensions that had been going on. So we had to review those extensions with state's attorney to make sure everything was in place for us still to do this renewal. So we are working on this for the past 2 weeks. Finalized this resolution last night, but then there was a question about this one attachment. Got that resolved during this meeting today. Caitlin Vargas at Civil she got on that right away, even while we're in this meeting, reviewed that, filed it with John Frank, and everything looks good. So that's why it wasn't in the packet. It turned into few extra hoops to jump through than normal. But we did get everything reviewed and do have it ready. The goal is to have it in place before our circuits expire. If this is signed in May by county or in March by county board, it gives time for us to get everything in place. So it's in place before our services would expire in April.
The weird thing about this one is that you are,
speak into your microphone, please, Mr. State's Attorney.
the weird thing about this is that you're piggybacking the state contract. And the state has done a really odd thing of just rather than rebidding it, they've just continued it 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. And now they've decided to rebid it. And it's unclear to all the counties that are jumping on that contract, whether or not it'll be AT&T again. And then it's not even clear whether or not they're going to do an extension again. So the upside was through this acknowledgement, we can get ourselves locked in for another year while the state figures out what it's going to do. And then if they ultimately go with AT&T over this year, we can then jump onto that contract again. So this is a little bit of a bridge that will allow us to get on the long-term contract.
Great, thank you. Any questions, Ms. Juby?
So responding to, this is a bridge, will we have adequate time when the other contract comes to review it? Or is it going to be one of those things where it comes and we're going to have to vote right away on that one as well?
No, the only reason for this one is because of the way the timing worked out. These two are part of a larger 5 set of contracts. The other 3 will come at a later time, is my understanding. These 2 are the timely ones where we were under the impression it was just a simple extension, but then we learned that the state was doing this weird thing, so we had to navigate it, which is the reason for the quick turnaround.
Guys.
Okay, yes, Mr.
I guess
Fronsack.
another thing to add is that Charles and the team, they've been working on putting together an actual bid solicitation or an RFP in the event that we don't have the state to work with. It's just been challenging because of so many units of government use the AT&T state contract for everybody to go out and ask them for proposals because of the termination of this agreement. It will present its own problems. Just the inbound requests to AT&T for responses. So we're hopeful that the state can straighten this out in due time.
All right, any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Arroyo,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Garcia, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Young,
Yes.
Juby,
Should be I,
Pius.
Pass, yes. May I have a motion and second to present and potentially approve resolution authorizing contract extension for low voltage data cabling and structured network cable engineering services with Blade Electric and Technologies. Moved by
Young.
Young, second by
should be.
Juby. Charles?
This is Charles Lasky with IT Department. This is our second and final extension that we want to have authorized. This was put out to bid, RFP 20-21. Blade Electric was the most responsible bidder. They were selected. We've been happy with their work. This work will continue to be used for regular IT projects. They're also doing work that's related to the ARPA project and the judicial modernization. So work at the Judicial Center and Third Street Courthouse. So this is for work that is needed by the county. It is, was selected through a bidding process, and it is a budget expense. We'd recommend approval.
Okay, and that was 650, up to 650K a year. Okay, Then, any questions for Charles? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Arroyo, Berman, Mr. Berman,
Berman, yes.
Garcia,
Garcia, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Young,
Yes.
Juby,
Juby, I.
Bias.
Pass, yes. Okay, then, moving on, that one is approved.
Question, did we motion on
Young and Juby. Mill Creek, anything, updates on Mill Creek?
Nothing for this month.
Nothing for this month, okay.
No.
Well, it's a toss-up. It's either Scott or the sheriff. What do you think, Ed? May I have a motion in a second, and then, sorry, Scott, you second, but at least it's not, trust me, there's more meeting to come. Okay, great. May I have a motion second for a resolution to to present and potentially approve the purchase of 7 replacement vehicles for the Kane County Sheriff's Office.
Gums
Moved
and-
by Gums, second by Arroyo. And I'm assuming you're going to go through these, Ed, or should I
I
go through? them?
can. We're going to be purchasing 5 Tahoes that are going to be replacing vehicles in the fleet that have averaged about 143,000 miles on them. They've reached their end of service life. So we're going to replace them with brand new Tahoes that we're lucky enough to get GM to commit to us. We're one of the only departments in Illinois that's going to get direct from GM. Secondly, we're going to be replacing 2 vehicles for our social workers. And they are going to be hybrids. We found that the hybrids are a better option for us to the amount of time they're on the road during the day. A fully electric vehicle that we got
Okay.
for our court services have been a little problematic for us. So we're going for the hybrid option to keep energy savings.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ed. Any comments or questions? Ms.
I
Juby?
just have a quick, what is a drone? Wait, you have it under here. Wait a minute.
These are going to be assigned to our drone officers.
Oh, so it's not like,
No, no,
They-
no, no.
Right.
They
we're-
just, the amount of equipment yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, the amount of equipment our drone operators are starting to carry in excess of their normal patrol equipment is made it a reason for, we'd like to put them in a larger vehicle.
S.A. Frank wants to be over there helping you out with that one.
This Juby, that's next year. We're getting those.
Mr. Arroyo?
I'll just be quick. What happened to the old, issue we're replacing? The old ones, are they sold, they traded in?
They'll be
restrictions
auctioned
then?
off. They're at the end of their service life, so I don't recommend using them anywhere in the county.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, the fireside sale at the outside or?
The county has a company that they use to.
Someone does take.
Yeah, highest bidder, whatever that is, may not be a lot. Okay, thanks, Mr. Arroyo. Make sure you speak into your microphone there. Then, any other questions?
Arroyo,
Arroyo, yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Garcia,
Garcia, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Young,
Yes.
Juby,
Juby, I.
Bias.
Guys, yes. Okay, then Mr. Scott Dezecki, for a short presentation. Sorry if you get you at the, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. Thank you.
Yeah, I've seen it. Give it to somebody that doesn't.
So Scott Bezecki, Emergency Management, just wanted to go into a little more detail about a proposed continuity of operations policy. This is something that came out of exercises that to plan and prepare for the potential need to move people, or if operations are interrupted by disaster or other emergency by any number of means, that we can get government back up and running quickly. So the policy is short and comes with a template that we would provide to the departments. It only applies to the departments, the non-elected departments that are reporting to the county board. Of course, other county offices, if they choose, could participate, and we'd be happy to support that. But essentially, it asks them to look at their operations and decide their essential functions and kind of ranked. Immediate meaning they need to be up and running immediately. So for my department, one example would be the Emergency Operations Center. if we had to evacuate the building, we need to get that up pretty quick. And we move to a new space, move to the health department building or somewhere where we've made plans. But the other opposite example is public education. We could put that on hold indefinitely. And that's just asking everybody in their operations to identify kind of that priority of their operations. And then the type of disruption, the main things that disrupt an operation are loss of people, loss of places, or loss of things. So obviously people are important. So having backups for people that do critical functions, and that probably exists in a lot of cases. Mainly, we just want to put all of it on paper, so it's there if we need it. Loss of places, meaning offices, spaces, and then loss of things such as systems, assets, records, backups to electronic records if those things kind of go down. And that's the gist of it. What we're just asking departments to do is engage in this planning process, put the stuff on paper on a template that we provide, and then that would all go together and kind of be attached to our emergency operations plan. In the event something that is needed, obviously in the moment, that's not the right time to be making these plans when there's an emergency and there's something wrong, a building has been damaged or whatever the case is. So we're just taking a long approach to giving everyone plenty of time to review it, to provide feedback. So I presented yesterday at JPS the same way and asked for feedback. I've shared it with all of the departments that are affected, shared it with the sheriff's office. So we're interested in feedback. We want to work together and find a way to get these things done. We're not asking for it to be done next week. We're going to take our time and make sure it's done right and give everybody plenty of time to do it. But in the end, just starting to think about these things, how you would operate after a disaster if you lose important things, people or places, is going to help them get back up and running rather than doing it in the heat of the moment. So just looking for feedback. I'm happy to take that now or take that via email or phone call or whatever. And, no decision. I'm not asking for a decision at this time, but at some point we'll come back with a resolution when the time is right and when we've received feedback.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Any comments? Oh, Ms. Gums?
Just to touch base with you again, I'm looking at, and everybody else in here who's going to participate in this, Roger and Charles. The Security Advisory Committee is going to be meeting so we can help help us. And I'm looking at March 10th at 1 p.m. or 10:30 in the morning. So as soon as I get that answer back, I will let you know. The rest of the week looks horrible. We're just trying to get it done as soon as possible. And then also there was a question asked yesterday, Charles, if we could have some discussion on cybersecurity.
Any other comments for Scott? Mr. Young?
Not my area of expertise at all, but obviously there's going to be a step-by-step procedure in place, something that's not the size of a Bible, but you need to have, so I think it's a great idea, but I mean, you're asking us for feedback. I don't have any expertise behind that, but having, a simple procedure in place on how you get up and running I think it's good.
Okay.
We're not putting you in charge of the door.
Mrs. Promises. Okay. All right. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging in here for us. All right. Well, then under new business, and Scott's was kind of new business as well. We have a resolution, repeating resolution 22439, authorizing the combining of the position of Executive Director of Information Technologies and Executive Director of Building Management, moved by
Gums will move.
Gums, second by
Young.
Young. Okay. Well, I think I discussed with the state's attorney that we would go into closed session.
Gums,
Yes, ma'am.
if there's language, help me out here. I would make a motion to go into executive session.
For the
Yes.
appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance of or dismiss all of a specific employee.
That's the one.
That sound reasonable to you, Mr. State's Attorney? Arroyo second. Well, I got Young's the second already,
And I'm gonna,
right? No? Or no? Oh, executive, yes. I'm sorry, it was Gums and Arroyo.
So didn't we have a
We're gonna go into closed session, or vote, please?
point of order? Didn't, we had a resolution on the, and we're gonna go into closed session before discussing the resolution? Is that I just want to know what the protocol is.
I think the protocol is to have the resolution and not, then go into closed session.
So
You gotta do the
my
closed session.
understanding is there's a component of this where people want to discuss stuff should be
It's,
confidential.
it's the part of this resolution.
It would be part of this resolution.
It's as I
history.
explained in the other committee, was that this is we're gonna be discussing a history of what has happened, hopefully give us a better perspective of what we're gonna be deciding on and doing.
And this should, Mr. Chair, this should be only board members?
Yes, yes, it will be
Okay,
only board
I'm gonna-
members, but we need to vote. Roll call, please.
Arroyo,
To executive session?
Yeah.
Go into second session.
Yes, we're going in.
Arroyo,
executive
yes.
Berman,
All right, yes.
Garcia,
Garcia, yes.
Gums,
Comes, yes.
Young,
Yes.
Juby, Pius.
Pius, yes. Then. Okay,
All right, everybody online that's
I'm going-
joining us
I'm
in
gonna,
the closed session, please accept the invites.
board
If
members
you are
don't leave
in the
until we get
room
a
and
roll
join
call, then we'll take
digitally
a
as
break.
well. You must also join before we can get started. Please be aware we are live streaming until I tell you we are all together again. Anything you say will be going out live to the public. Please accept those invites.
Absolutely. Well,
have
we
to
need
raise
to
it
do a
higher
roll
for
call
Roger.
first before you go away for a closed session. Roll call, we'll have to do a roll call. Are you leaving the room? We'll take a break.
I'm missing one person in the room, needs to accept their invite.
Done.
I know I'm done.
Oh. Great, thanks, thanks for looking back. But that's what I'm. Yeah. So once the- I'm very- that's- like, you know, so we said this problem. We said this policy. And we take them out, and I don't believe we're supposed to be that we're forced to replace things. Oh, right. Yeah, you have to get new board members. So like you're. This conversation that go 2 hours.
What do you recommend?
My recommendation is just continue this for 1 week. Give you guys an opportunity to come in and read things. And we come back. It's. It says to the president. Right, so remember, all those results. That's the issue. That's obvious. That's the reason. So that's what's actually talking about. Specifically. So for case you less than. Watching us. Sure. Yeah, that's. That was my thinking. So actually. Questioning what I was looking at. Science. Science has something to do. That's not where I came from. So, right here. That's now. That's I believe that all the cost. Weird. Maybe, but I like to say it's still just part, but you're on this big, right? So the audience, it seems very good. You know, this is what they're talking about. It's like, I'll bring it.
I need to leave.
Yeah.
So, but John,
She's gotta go too. Yes, now we're at. Yeah, maybe I'm not, my point is. There's really no reason. I think a lot of time, these committee meetings don't last, they don't not 2 hours, yeah. I didn't know we had 2 hours.
You broadcast on YouTube. There. Where? This is being broadcast on YouTube.
I just was.
Yeah.
Figure out.
Baby Sonia is accidentally logged on.
Yeah.
Way to make me run.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
So you're going with him to going on YouTube here. Or I was on that way and Gasly.
Sprinted down the hallway.
All right, you're in open session.
We're in open session. Excuse me, roll call, please.
Arroyo, Berman, Garcia,
Garcia here.
Gums,
Gums here.
Young, Juby, Caius,
Vice President.
Roth,
We're out here.
and in person.
Okay, we're here. Whoop. I would move that we table resolution repealing resolution 22, resolution repealing the resolution 224039, authorizing the combining of the positions of Executive Director of Information Technologies and Executive Director of Building Management. Is there a second?
Second.
Arroyo seconds.
To
Billing.
when?
This is the table
So table.
indefinitely.
I wasn't able to ask my question then.
Nope.
Discussion.
No
there's
discussion on
at the
tabling.
Table.
I want to know whether we're going to go ahead. I think we've gone just through 3 hours of this. This doesn't mean that we won't talk about this.
Yes, it does. It's tabling it.
No. If we,
Table or?
you guys are going to go visit your, postpone is just problematic on where we're going to meet again. We're going to be here no later than next month. But that's a discussion. Roll call, please.
To postpone, Arroyo, or I'm sorry, to table, right? To table.
The table.
Arroyo, Berman,
Yes.
Garcia. Miss Garcia,
Sorry. Here, yes.
thank you. Gums,
No.
Young's not here. Juby,
No,
Caius.
Yes.
It is tabled 4-2.
Motion's been tabled. Is there any old business? I will entertain a motion or a request to consent to place reports on file.
Gums will ask for unanimous consent.
Gums ask for unanimous consent to put reports on files. Or any discussion?
No.
Hearing none.
Objections.
No, with no objection? Right, thank you. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Gums will move to adjourn.
Gums moved. to-
Second.
Arroyo second. All in favor?
Aye.
Then we will be taking this up again.